of you. Thank you so much, SGI and the organizing team for considering me for this talk. I'm going to be very technical in this, as the talk says, technical tips for lumen apposing and biflange metal stent placement. So let's understand what we are looking at. We have lumen opposing stents, that's Axios and Spaxis. They, as the name suggests, are lumen opposing. That is, they oppose the two lumens very well together and great for creating fistulas, gastrojejunostomies, gallbladders, and also collections. On the other hand, you have the biflange stents, which are great for draining collections. Not ideal for fistulas, although probably can be done, but still you're using them for fluid collections. Okay. Now what you have also are HOT or cautery enhanced stents. Original one was the HOT Axios from Boston Scientific. And now you also have Spaxis and Honto RF from J. Mitra. Whenever you're looking at placing any of these stents, I think the one important parameter to look at is the inner flange diameter. Okay. Now, if you look at the options available, Boston comes, the Axios comes from 10 to 20 mm. What I like to do is generally a 15 mm, say 14, 16 mm stent size, because that permits easy access with endoscope later if you have to do necrosectomies. Next is the length of the stent. The Axios is the shortest, 10 millimeters. The others are basically 2 centimeters or longer. Remember, Taiwoom Spaxis stent is actually a lumen opposing stent, although long 2 centimeters. The distance between flanges is less than 1 centimeter, so it's actually a lumen opposing stent. And then something to remember, the catheter diameter for advancement of stents is between 10 and 11 French, which is between 3.3 and 3.6 millimeters. So as you dilate and again access to this cavity, remember that's the size of the catheter that you need to advance. Just one slide on comparison of the lumen opposing force of the metal stents. Elegant study by Teo and colleagues compared Nagy, Spaxis, and Axios for creating a fistula, various fistulas. Ultimately, what they found was Axios was actually the best for creating a fistula with lumen opposing, high lumen opposing force, followed by Spaxis, followed by Nagy. All right. Remember, you have to use a therapeutic scope because these are the scopes which will permit passage of a 10 French catheter and not your regular smaller caliber scopes. All right. So I'm not going to repeat some of the steps as outlined very nicely by Dr. Garg, but just some things different. Whenever you start with evaluating the collection, I think it's important when you're placing metal stents to make sure there's no blood vessel in the wall. My preference, see in this particular case, you see a nice arterial vessel coursing through the wall, which would put it at risk of bleeding with the internal flange eroding against the vessel. Okay, straight position as Dr. Garg nicely outlined. Of course, you have to ensure there are no blood vessels. Just one little thing I'd like to say is, with Doppler, you can easily find these vessels, but it is so easy to compress them. You press the gastric wall and you use Doppler, you won't find a vessel. Next thing you know, you pull it out a little bit and your needle may be through a vessel. So always, before putting a needle, check, pull the scope away a little bit, and definitely when you're doing a cystotome, because burning a track through a vessel is not a good idea, especially if it's an arterial vessel. Okay. The next thing to note, I feel always, is these collections are oftentimes near cardia. So when you are getting access to the collection, I'm going to show you this little case here. At the G junction, the access across the esophagus is great, but I may have to go through the crura. On the left side of the screen is the transgastric axis, and I'm not able to see the collection well over there. So I had to really maneuver in this particular case to ultimately sort of find axis, and I'm just going to show you in a second here, axis across the gastric wall into the far end of the cavity. I ended up putting a plastic stent here, but just to illustrate the point that you want to be across the gastric lumen and below the G junction, preferably below the cardia, so that you don't cause a pneumothorax in these patients. You want to measure the distance between stomach and cyst wall. Now, this is relevant if you're putting an Axios, less relevant for, say, Nagy, Plumber, any of these stents, because they are longer in length. So it doesn't really matter. Oftentimes, it's usually not more than like 1 or 2 centimeters, but just bear in mind when you're doing Axios for sure. We use a 19 gauge needle as it allows 0.35-inch guide wires to go through. Again, Dr. Pramod Garg nicely outlined this. You want to put a couple of coils as he outlined. Just a word of caution, if you're using a 0.25-inch guide wire, it's a VisiGlide. The current may not transmit via cystotome. So my advice, if you want to use 0.25, don't use Visi, do something else, a really nice wire, but don't use that wire for cystotome advancement. Then you use a 6 French cystotome. I use the one with G-Flex, works quite well for me. You want to be in the same sort of direction as the wire is in. The larger cystotomes don't seem to work that well. It's just a little hard to advance them just over the wire, okay? As far as balloon dilation is concerned, remember, for a metal stent, you're advancing a 3.3 millimeter catheter diameter. So you don't really need to do a 12 balloon dilation. My preference is a 6 balloon. I think the larger balloons may have a little bit of a risk of bleeding. So 6 balloon works perfectly well. You can do larger if you need to, but 6 is fine. Okay. As far as the views are concerned, I prefer to do it with the EUS view and nicely demonstrate that it's going across the wall. And I can see with the echo endoscope in the middle, this is the fluid-filled balloon going across the wall, the gastric wall, into the collection. Now, this is another important part, which I'm going to illustrate here, is the stent advancement, okay? Now, what you're looking at on the screen is to make sure that you are actually able to visualize the wire, because that's very important as you're advancing the stent, especially if the gastric lumen is thick, okay? Because what happens is when you have a straight wire and you're looking at it, your scope is in a stable position, you push the stent across, the force of the force gets transmitted in the appropriate direction, okay? But if on the bottom right cartoon here, say you're not looking at the wire, under EUS, you're looking at the collection, you feel like the stent has to go in, but this is what probably is happening. You're pushing it in the gastric wall and the wire is facing somewhere else. And therefore, this force is not getting transmitted correctly. So it's very important that you visualize the wire and advance the stent just over the wire as you're seeing it, okay? If you look at the anatomy of the stent, there's the outer X-ray marker, which is actually the inner flange marker. There is the inner X-ray marker, which is sort of the middle of the stent. And I'm just going to switch to the deployment part here. So what I like to do is deploy the inner flange deep inside the cavity. And then what I do is I pull up the stent, and I'm going to pause at this moment here because I pulled up the stent opposing nicely to the gastric wall. And at this point, what I like to do personally, and others may have different plans or techniques, what I like to do is a short exchange, all right? So what I like to do is keep this position for the internal flange, pull the scope out by 2 centimeters or so while pushing the catheter out. All right, I'll just show you how it looks. So I'm going to pull the scope out. My catheter is being pushed inside slightly, and I'm able to visualize the yellow marker here, which is the top of the stent. And then I use my endoscopy views personally to deploy the flange inside the gastric lumen, and that's how it should look. So just to show finally deployed stent, the flange inside the lumen should be open. It should be this hourglass appearance. On EUS, you can see it looks like this. On the X-rays, it looks like a nice hourglass appearance. All right, switching gears, deployment of cautery enhanced stents. Specifically, I'm going to discuss hot Axios. It's much easier. I love the device. It's much easier deploying this compared to regular stents with a lot of exchanges. Some things to note: the depth of the fluid collection should be 5 centimeters. And I'll tell you in the next few slides why. You're going to use a pure cutting current as shown. These are the sort of settings that you want. For those who are not well versed with this stent or haven't really used it much, it can be a little inundating to look at it, these knobs and the locks, and it's important to understand conceptually what you're actually doing, okay? So firstly, you're going to mount the Axios stent on the scope like an FNA needle. You're going to screw it in properly. Now remember, oftentimes if you don't screw it in properly, it can be loose. And in these patients, it may just fall out and you don't want that. The rest of the considerations applicable to Axios as well. But the things you need to note, you cannot reverse any of the steps. So for instance, if you're deployed the flange in the cavity, you're not going to be able to reverse that, which you can actually do with the regular metal stents, okay? You have to lock after every step. So just as you look at the Axios catheter, Axios stent, here's what you see. This is the catheter hub and there's a catheter lock. And just to illustrate the point, what it does is basically advances the entire assembly forward with step 1. And then with step 3, the entire assembly moves back, okay? And the next part is what we term as the stent deployment hub with lock. The step 2 is the internal flange deployment in the cavity. And step 4 is the deployment of the flange externally in the gastric duodenal cavity. So as we are advancing the Axios, the first question is, do you want to do it freehand or over a previously placed guide wire? I like to do freehand. And as I showed you in the earlier slide, when a wire is placed, you really have to make sure that you're actually going over the wire. But if it's freehand, it really finds the path of least resistance. So my suggestion is doing freehand, especially if you're doing gallbladder and GJ cases. The next thing to do is stent the gastric wall, again, applicable for gallbladder GJ cases, less for fluid collections. Here's what I'll show you. Now, here's the gastric wall, and I've not really pushed the catheter, okay? And the next thing you do is stent it. So I pushed the catheter out a little bit, and I've tented the gastric wall to increase a bit of tension on the gastric wall, which will permit my passage of the catheter more easily when I start pressing the pedal on the cautery. So what you need to do is a steady firm pressure. You don't want to jab it like FNA needle. You don't want 0.01 seconds for it to enter the cavity, okay? You can give it a little bit of time, burn through it, because you're burning through 2 walls with a 10 French blunt device. So remember, you're going to be very gentle and nice, firm, steady pressure and burn nicely through the cavity. And what you need to do is you have to go all the way, okay? Just before that, this is a little fast in my video, but you can be a little slow and it's totally fine. And you have to go all the way, all right? When I say go all the way, it means number 1 has to be touching the locks almost. If not 100%, at least 80–90% of the way. And the reason for that is the catheter itself, when you go inside, is 5 centimeters, okay? But the internal flange is only 0.5 centimeters. And it's sort of located in the middle/proximal part of the catheter. And when you deploy it, and I'll show you in the next video how it looks. The second step is to deploy the internal flange. And as you see, you have to take out this lock, open it and pull it up so that the internal flange is deployed. And I'll show you in a second. Just before that, before you place it, whether you need to put a guide wire is optional. Sometimes you can do it before step 2 if you're planning to place plastic stents on nasocystic catheter. And basically, when you do step 2, you have to go all the way to number 2. You cannot do midway. You have to go all the way. Remember, you cannot be partial. You have to hear until it sort of clicks in place, okay? And as I was alluding to, you see here the catheter is long, almost 5 centimeters in. But when you deploy the stent, it's almost close to the cyst wall. So if you have the catheter in, like, say, midway, and you deploy the internal flange, you're probably going to deploy it outside the wall, okay? So be careful and make sure that you go all the way in step 1. The next thing to do is to oppose the internal flange close in a certain angle, as I'm going to show you. So you look at the video here, the internal flange is deployed, and I just pull it up gently with step 3 of the catheter hub. Now, there's no set rule, but what I like to do is to have an obtuse angle, something more than 120 degrees. You don't want to do too much because then you'll pull out the stent. You don't want to do too less because then you're a little too inside. So you want to have about a 120-degree angle or so. And again, step 3 doesn't have to be all the way. It has to be till the point where you find this angle, okay? And then the next part is step 4, which is the deployment of the flange in the gastric/duodenal lumen. So again, this has to be all the way also, okay? Now, remember, when you do step 4, most of us want to do it deploying in the scope channel. So you deploy it all the way in the scope channel. Remember, you're not going to see it on your endoscopic view when you do it because your scope is right next to the gastric wall, okay? But once you've done step 4, what I like to do is unlock my step 1-3 catheter hub, gentle clockwise, counterclockwise torque, pull the scope out just a tad bit, and then I just gently push the catheter a little bit out, and I'll show you in the video how it should look. Now I have just pulled the scope out a little bit, and I've unlocked the catheter hub and pushed slightly gently, and then, now the stent is deployed. Post-LAMS deployment, suction all the fluid out. Remember, these patients can have a lot of fluid, and when they're extubated, they can aspirate. Sometimes we remove more than like a liter of pus, like you see in this case. The next question is whether you need to balloon dilate or not. You can do it. The risk of bleeding, I personally feel, I've seen patients bleed after this, and I don't feel strongly the need to do it. So I don't usually do it. You can, if you want to do it, you can do it up to the maximum stent diameter. Remember, it's not a stricture. You don't have to do it for 2 minutes. It's only 5 seconds and it's dilated. Okay. Whether you need to place a nasocystic catheter, there are schools of thoughts and different styles. I like to do it in necrotic debris because I know I'm going to do necrosectomy most likely as it develops SIRS. So I preemptively place them oftentimes. You can use a 7 or 10 French catheters and then flush it with normal saline every 4 to 6 hours. Whether you need to place double pigtail plastic stents is a little questionable. The thought is that you actually reduce migration. You know, when I've been doing this for a while, and the last, I don't know, 50 odd stents, we've not placed it. It's been fine. They didn't migrate. I'm not sure if you really need to. If you're placing it for like 6 months, maybe. Otherwise, no. Maybe in antrum, because there's a high risk of migration. In gallbladders, I like to do it. Not always in cystogastrostomies. Bleeding risk is lower. The thought is that opposite wall doesn't come against the internal flange. Not evidence-based, that's the thought. Reducing stent blockage, now that may happen if you're planning to discharge the patient with solid necrotic debris in a day or two, and you don't have a nasocystic catheter in place. So therefore, in these patients, probably it's okay to do. All right, some challenging situations. Sometimes, now this is a case where we were placing it across fundus because that's the only place where we could find an access. And it was really hard because my scope was taut. It was really difficult. Again, you want to make sure you have a nice sort of right angle in there. And ultimately, we managed to get this in place, but it can be challenging in fundus. And the other location is antrum, okay? What can go wrong is one of my earlier cases with my technician, and we were not quite in sync. I think you really need to be in sync with your technician when you're doing this, okay? Here we are placing across the antrum, and I got my metal stent nicely deployed inside. The internal flange was nicely deployed. But then as soon as I'm trying to deploy my external flange, what happened was I'm pulling the stent out. I'm trying my best, but the whole antrum with the collection sort of came in here. And before I knew it, the flange was deployed. So we just ended up sort of doing a CRE balloon and then advance the scope inside the cavity, which you will see here. And I found the stent. I grabbed the thread. I think this was a plumber stent, and I sort of puckered it in and pulled it out, and basically outside the cavity now, and made sure that it's deployed in place as it should be. Sometimes things opposite happen here. Yes, 2 minutes, or am I done?
No, 2 minutes.
Okay, cool. So this is the opposite problem. I've deployed the flange internally, I guess, appropriately, and which is what it seemed like. Again, there's some communication error, and my technician actually recaptured the stent, and then in process, ultimately, bottom line, we placed it incorrectly. We were outside the cyst wall here, and I'm looking at the cyst cavity wall from outside. So what he did was we just pulled out the stent. I went in and managed to find the access to the cyst up on top 12 o'clock, as you see there. We got a guide wire in place. And then we loaded the stent on a esophageal stent assembly and basically deployed it properly in place. Okay. And there you go. So that went smoothly. And none of these patients had any major problems. So it's okay if any of these problems happen. Here I'm deploying, and I think we inadvertently pulled the stent back a little too much. And well, it's not really lost. We've decided to recapture the stent, what you see here. And then we push it back again in, deploy it properly, and then deploy the external flange. So, and then post-LAMS bleeding can be a problem. And this is a patient who ended up having it longer than we wanted. The stent in place, had GI bleeding, lost 3-4 units of blood. And what we found was this not so beautiful looking ulcer with a pigmented spot, which we ended up having to sort of soft coagulate. The patient did fine and did not have any problems after that. And then sometimes we are not that lucky. This patient had bleeding. As we pull the stent back a little bit, there's this arterial spurter caused because of internal flanges of the stent, causing erosions and pseudoaneurysm formation. Unfortunately, this one did not get managed endoscopically and go surgical intervention. Then you have problems with the block stent. This can be done really not too difficult to remove. You can use blunt instruments. I think sometimes use a biopsy forceps without closed biopsy forceps and push the debris inside, or snare, or sometimes rat tooth. But just be careful when you're using rat tooth that your rat tooth doesn't get stuck in the interstices of the stent. We've started doing it about a year and a half now since I have moved back. We've done about 75 patients with metal stents, 96% technical success. 4% were the ones we didn't have proper walled-off collection, or there were too many blood vessels. We had 3 patients who bled a lot, unfortunately, from the vessels in the wall of the collection. 5% migration, mostly during necrosectomy, but was replaced accordingly. 4% stent block. If I have a few slides, if I have a few seconds, I suppose I can just go with some.
Very late, Saurabh. You are very late. Please conclude.
Oh, okay, I'm going to stop then. That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.